Way back on my junior days, when your boy is just starting up his cybersecurity career, I got a lot of threat intel sites to validate a domain. Usual, when you're gathering threats, you must have a reliable resource. Got one of it with VirusTotal. So I have already implemented it to some of our tools like Spider, Agila, and Bit. But for your assessment to be reliable, you must have more. What I'm saying is, you must have more threat intel resources with you. I have to start in the short series. We will crawl other threat intel sites, gather all those data, put it in our tool, and we just have ourselves some general infos, man. And now we got all that out of the way. Cue the intro.
Malicious or suspicious sites. Done with my evaluation. What are you waiting for? Like and subscribe now. Oh yeah.
So to start this up, this is the Trend Micro website. They call this SiteSafety. Thus we have this domain, global SiteSafety.trendmicro.com. To go over this site, we normally input the URL or domain assessed in here. With regards to their web assessment, they don't have this score, unlike some other tools that feedback a site, depending on other vendor point of view, creating a risk score for a particular website. What they have is a safety ratings that are assigned based on some factors. May it be the website age, historical locations, the changes they made on the website, and indications of any suspicious activity. The suspicious activity discovered upon the behavioral analysis. They have these 4 safety ratings. So safe, this just indicate that the site is clean and has good reputation. Next we have dangerous. With this, the site has historical or existing malware components. Suspicious, if the site has historical findings of compromise or associated with sites that are compromised. Next we have untested, obviously, which means that the site have yet to be assessed. Let's test one website and check the outcome for it. Let's say we wanted to assess Stack Overflow. We have that input right there. Check it now. The site is safe, categorized as computers or internet and cloud applications. So you can see here how they categorize this site. The site is about computers, internet, or related technology. And we have cloud applications. This application used a cloud platform. For me, Stack Overflow is not just about forums. It's more like the mix of Q&A, blog, web forums, and more like this website also educates those aspiring programmers or those students who are learning programming. Let's say you wanted to classify this website. So if you check this one, you will have here the different category list. Social networking. You collaborate with different programmers. I had to admit that Stack Overflow did a major role for me and provided me facts as I progress in programming. The main question here is, can I crawl this? Well, in my years of web crawling, some entity are open sharing their data, but the request must not overflow their threshold, which in that case, if there are lots of requests from your program, this could lead to some denial of service. That is why majority of the sites has session cookie or CAPTCHA, so the request would be limited and identified. Let's see what we can have here in their front end. We'll need to see the ID of their form input. Let's inspect this one. Okay, there we have it. The value of the name and the value of the ID is the same, which is URL name. Take a look at the form ID, which is the URL form here. As you can see here, the form ID is URL form and the method is post. This means when we input something in this form and when we click check now or submit, this will redirect us to action, which is result.php. So the output of this would be in the result.php. Test how the data flow if we input our request and have a pick on the network tab. Okay, right now there's nothing displayed here, But when we click this one, let's see how our request is processed. Okay, as you can see here. So you can see a lot of request data available on this site. But we are concerned with this result.php. You can see this is the request URL via post method. We are posting data. We are uploading data. Status code is okay, so it means that the request is successful. You can see also here the remote IP or the remote address. Here's the response header. It's typically an HTTP header that can be used in any HTTP response, and that doesn't relate to the content of this message. The response headers like the age and the location, the servers, the cache control, the date, the expiration, and the set cookies, as you can see here. So this is the response header. Coming from the response header is the request header. The request header, this provide information about the request context so that the server can tailor the response. The request header, this indicate the allowed and preferred format of the response. It's like you're filling out a form of information, and once you fill that out, all this information will then be transferred to the web server, and by that we have this response header here. We can see here that the host or the origin initially came from their homepage, SiteSafety.trendmicro.com. Then we have the form data. Form data contains the URL name, which is stackoverflow.com, and get info. URL name is our remembered when we inspect this one. Input name is the URL name. The ID is also URL name. This only means that the request is successful and informations are gathered for response or output. As for the response, is the HTML response. This is our input, and the result here is safe, right? This is the div class, which is label title result as the class name. This is the description. The latest test indicate the URL doesn't contain any malicious software. Okay, and we can see also the categories. So this is the category, computer and internet, and the description of that one, and cloud applications, and the description. This is the raw preview of the result, which is this. Alright, so this is like with no CSS or no designs. This will be the raw preview of what you're seeing here. We are now ready for the pseudocode. We are going to set the algorithm for what we've just analyzed. We know that our initial site request, globalsafety.trendmicro.com, and the result will be in result.php or trendmicro.com/result.php via post method. So what we're gonna do now is that we are going to create a loop that would handle the request session. All our requests will be under a while loop. So our session will be in a loop. Then we are going to set the initial URL request, which is URL_ini. And which in this case we have this. Okay, paste it up. So this is the initial URL request. Since the request from the initial URL is post, we will initiate the request from URL_ini via the post method. So we know that we are posting this input right here for the web server to evaluate. So what we're gonna do is we are say post URL. That makes sense. Since the request from the initial URL is post, we will initiate the request from URL_ini via the post method. Alright. We will set and gather the needed variables to be passed on. Variable would include the ID from the URL and from the URL input. So going back, we have the name of the variable of the form is URL name. That's the ID as well. What we're gonna do now is we are going to pass it in a variable. Let's just say it's input and URL name. After that, we will post the parameters on the form. After having this our input, we are going to post it. So that means that on click, what will happen next? So the data will be passed on to another page that would give feedback to our input. So next would be post URL underscore any and data equals, the data here is the input that we are going to pass it on. So this data variable here is the default dictionary parameter from our post method. Performing get method. To do this, we have get and URL ini. Right now we have two methods here. First, we post the initial URL, and then we post our input, which in this case, this one, and then we will get this to see what is displayed on the main site, because in which we get the HTML response, given that the link now contains the output from our query. So yeah, this will comprise our variable. I translate this one to a Python program. That's where we're going at right now. Now that I have given you my algorithm, it's time to run my web crawler and see if we can crawl this website. Okay, there we go. And so the URL, let's say we have youtube.com. Alright, so we have the HTML response here. The CMD command prompt can't handle all this, so I created an output file to print all of this. So here's the preview. As you can see here, this is youtube.com. Yeah, I think we can crawl the site. So there you go. Yeah, it's safe, and let's compare this side to side. Here is the preview for it, the HTML response. So we have, yeah, it's safe, and the category is streaming media and cloud applications. Let's try phishing site. So let's say we have this one. There you go. It said that the site is dangerous, so we should have the same output on that. Phishing URL from fish tank. Response is the same with that one. All right, it's dangerous. The category is phishing. This is the result HTML response. We can see that the equivalent HTML tags, we have our input under div class result URL header, which is this. This is our input right here. We have the feedback, which is dangerous, under div class label title result, yeah, and its description right here. And we have the category right here. This is under div class label title small result, also with another category, right, description under label info column header. So basically we don't need this syntax, right? We don't need this syntax right here. We don't need that. It's just the data indicating the feedback of the URL and its category. I have edited my code and print what is needed. Let's rerun. This is our input right here. Yes, we just scrolled SiteSafety. Hope y'all enjoyed this video and be safe. This is Cyber DJ Can, and I'm dropping the mic until the next upload.